and stuff where we recreated Ashley returning from the first rendezvous of 1825. And so I'll turn over to Jack, because Jack is a guy who came up with this idea to do this trip. He kept it to himself for a year. He thought if he brought it up, people would think he was crazy, but I was the first guy he mentioned it to, and he's not crazy. We were all in on this thing. So I'll turn over to Jack.
Thank you. I'll use the microphone here for a while. So Ashley's return and why. Several of us share a study of the fur trade, and once a year we would meet in the Rocky Mountains and spend a week recreating a rendezvous. So over the years, I always watched guys and women ride into the rendezvous, maybe take it 3 or 4 days, maybe up to a week, and sometimes a vehicle fall over with supplies. And I thought, it would really be neat to leave a rendezvous on a ride out and make it a long trip. And so at that time I was studying Ashley, and I mentioned this to Gerry. I said, what about leaving the rendezvous on a long trip? And he said, I'm in. I thought, this is going to happen. So, yeah. So that was 2017, so we had 2 years to prepare for this. And so we began tanning hides, making gear, hand sewing, making everything as close to period correct as possible for this trip, acquiring animals, making saddles, and training on horseback. I'm not a horseman, but you don't get on a horse and ride 25 miles a day without riding. So there's a lot of training that went into this. One other man made this ride with us. He couldn't make it here this weekend. It was a neighbor of mine who I've shared this with when I got home in 2017, and he said, hey, I'm in, I'll go. So the 3 of us committed to this, returning from what was Ashley's first rendezvous in 1825. I know this map is probably a little hard to see here. I don't have a laser pointer. But Ashley held his rendezvous in what is currently Lone Tree, Wyoming, just north of Utah. And he rode horseback with 60 men with the furs he collected from them after they'd been out there 3 years. And he had 60 men and borrowed horses, and he took the furs and the horses all the way up to Montana to what is Fort Smith today. There they killed buffalo on Grapevine Creek and built buffalo hide boats out of the hides and willow, and they floated up the Bighorn to the Yellowstone and then on up to North Dakota. And this is where Ashley met a contingency of government keel boats, Atkinson and O'Fallon, who were there. They were going up the Missouri making treaties with Indians because the Indians were always attacking the supply boats. So they were trying to stop this, and it just, I don't think it was a happen so, because Ashley knew Atkinson, and we think that he probably had on the side said, hey, I'm going to be coming through here about then. So when Ashley arrived up here, Atkinson and O'Fallon were there, and he threw his hides onto their keel boats and floated back to St. Louis. This was about a 2,000-mile journey, and we left about the same time he did from the rendezvous site, and inevitably we arrived in St. Louis about the same time. 3 months later, we left July 6th and arrived St. Louis October 8th. I'll let Gerry, this is Gerry's slide presentation, so I'm going to let him take it from here.
Go back. So, William Ashley, and that's his famous ad for enterprising young man going to trap beaver. And as you know or may not know, the beaver hat was all the rage. It was the fashion. It was the thing. And the further, the beaver's been trapped out in the Kentucky West. And like Jack said, he had sat men out there for 2 to 3 years with no resupply, and realized he needed to go out. So he went out in the fall of 24, had the rendezvous, and came back in 25. And he was a trapper first, and then owned the fur company, and then when he brought all his hides back, he made quite a sum of money, probably pretty close close to $1 million in today's dollars, and he went into politics, became the first lieutenant governor of Missouri. Then died quite a young man. So these are the three guys. In the middle is Amish, and he got his nickname because he never used to have a mustache, and his nieces and nephews used to say, "Scott, are you Amish?" You know, so that's his nickname. But he couldn't be here because of work, and but that was here just really last year. There was three of us that did the whole journey, and as I get into it, on each section, there were people that joined and came in and left throughout the journey. Okay. So this is actually my horse. What I want to point out, Jack talked about 2 years to prepare for the journey and making everything. And there was nothing machine sewn on our journey. Everything was hand sewn just like it would have been back then. And this is just my horse, and it's a St. Louis style saddle that was handmade, hand sewn, and then we had to make the canteens, which I have one here, one on each side to get balance weight on the horse. The saddle bags were hand sewn by a friend of mine, and in there I would keep, my eating utensils, my day-to-day stuff, and then the other side, the off side of the horse would be like 2 or 3 days worth of food. In case you get separated, you got to have some rations with you, and a sewing kit, just the very basic essentials. And then on the back was a rain poncho, my petite coat, which turned out to be what we call mosquito armor there, and then a ground cloth. Actually, I had a wool poncho hidden in there, wrapped up. I had a new language gun, a St. Louis style powder horn, and a bag made by Jeff Food. But all that stuff that's on that horse, all of it, except for the petite coat, was made after we made the decision to do it. So you can see why it took 2 years. And then on top of that, there's food bags, cloth bags, hand sewn that went inside oilcloth bags, that went inside a bigger oilcloth bag. Just all kinds of things that we had to make. The saddle got to be done by one of the guys in the horse trip, and had to get arrows to protect their feet. So it's a long process to get from A to B just to be able to do this trip to have the handmade gear. And this is like, so on the ride course in the very beginning, when you talk about gear, I'd like to start over here because you got, the pack animals, and we had 6 guys, 6 men, 6 riders, and 6 horses and 3 pack animals, 2 men per pack animal. And this is actually Curly the mule. That's an incredible mule, by the way. That mule is trained to T-row, do cattle, do cutting, and do packing. It's quite a mule. But so you got the panniers on each side, you got your federals and blankets on top. And when we were out there in 2019, I met some folks, I don't know if you're here, they're from Wyoming. I told them what year we went, they were like, because it was like one of the driest, hottest years ever. And but every day, when you pack up the pack saddles and get all your gear ready, you have to weigh them, because these need to weigh exactly the same on each side. If they're offset, weigh the same, about a mile or two, they're going to go whoop, and then you're repacking the critter, and you got problems. So this was the first stop on the first day, and it was, the entire horseback ride was just like yesterday, every day, that hot. That's how bad it was that summer. So we packed up, you weigh them, you pack everything up, and as you eat the food, and as you use up horseshoes, you're always cross level in the saddle. So it's a lot of work every day just to get out and get going, and your priority is always your animals, because William Ashley, he rides 100 horses and 50 men. If one goes lame, they just shoot a deal. We don't have that luxury, so you have to take care of your animals every day. And when you stop, the first thing you do is you take your pack saddles off, leave your pack animals, pick them out, give them water, pick them out on grass, and move back to your horse, take everything off, get it to water, then get it out, pick it on grass, and then you worry about the fire and the heating and all that after your critters are taken care of. And you check their feet every night, ladies that can tell up in Grable, Wyoming, sleep on my horse. But the ride was, next one. So the top left, that's what we saw every day from sage, just day after day after day. And the picture on the right is good because, you know, people say, what did you take for food and how did you keep your meat? So we took dried food, beans and rice and different things like that, and we made stews. We also took, I don't know, 50 or 60 pounds of raw meat. And every day, at the end of the day, you have a tripod for your food where you're cooking, and you stand all that meat up on the top of the TV, and it smokes it slowly, and that raw meat lasted about 14, 15 days, somewhere in there. When we got down to like green and almost maggots, then Hans, this guy, he weeded it. The rest of us didn't. He has a cast iron stomach. But we did, so on a ride through this, 700 miles. We basically, the worst day was 12 miles. The best, the least amount of miles a day was 12. We had a photographer with us. It was awful. Shooter. And then the worst day, we did summer, we did 30, 35, and then the guy would let us ride through this property, so we had to do another 5 miles. So almost a 40-mile day that day. But that's about all you see. We went through South Pass, which is very well known for the amount of grizzly bears there, and the amount of elk, but it was so hot and so dry, all the animals were up in the high country. So we saw almost nothing other than antelope and wild mustangs. So that was, and on the ride, you know, we started off at the ranch of a guy named Joe Hickey, and then as we went along, people found out we were coming and riding across their land. And they were incredibly generous and hospitable. You know, one guy's house is like, you're not going to go there, there's no grass in the water, come to my house, you know, put your horses out on my lawn, I don't have to mow it, don't worry about the manure, I'll just mow it up. You know, he's like, can my wife make you something to eat? I'm like, oh, we have food. And he's like, oh, no, you're our guest. And we go in and she's got chicken fried steak. And I think there's like golden corral on the table. You know? People are just good 6 ways to Sunday. But the crew, when you talk, and I'm going kind of fast, I only got about an hour to get 95 days. But the horse crew, so if you take me, Amish, and Jack, the 3 of us, Amish probably had more time on horses. But he would never call himself an expert. Jack and I were cranky amateurs when we started planning this and riding. But if you look at the other 3 guys, you know, the first guy you got here is Hans Asmussen. He's a lifelong horse rider. He's also a homeopathic doctor. He's also an acupuncturist. He's also a chiropractor. He's also a horse trainer. He rides 10 miles every morning. So the guy, and then he's got his son Conan with him, who trains horses full time and is a farrier. So in those two, when Conan was 11, 12, and 13, each summer they did 1/3 of the Canada to Mexico ride as part of their homeschool. So you want to talk about experienced riders, you know, built-in farrier and everything, we had it right there. Then this guy in the middle with the beard, Dixon Varner, he is the leading equine stallion geneticist in the country and one of the top 3 in the world. So he's a professor at Texas A&M for a long time, traveled the world doing equine genetics for stallions, reproductive issues and all that. And he's actually now retired. He was inducted into the Veterinarian Hall of Fame. So you got a guy that's a horse doctor with a surgical kit who can actually operate on us. So you just can't make it up. And they said they wanted to go, and we're like, oh, heck yeah. You know, so it was a great crew, a lot of experience across the board, and we really didn't really have a whole lot of issues on the horseback ride. Everything went pretty smooth. We did have one experience where we were at Pacific Springs, which is where, you know, you've got the Mormon Trail, the Colorado Trail, the Pony Express Trail, and some other trail. They're all kind of like the same ones, and they cross. There's Pacific Springs. It was the old cabin. And people going west would stop there. They would graze their cattle, and they would rest. But a lot of people had a cholera there. So we get there, and we're out in the grassy area, and we're all sitting on horses, letting them, you know, feed off the grass. And I look down, and the grass is like, it's like moving. spring feeds underneath and lifts the sod. So we're all on top as we're halfway out. We're looking at each other, well, we go back or we just keep going. You don't know how deep it is, so we just decided everybody pick a direction to go. And eventually, all 9 critters broke through. My horse went up this big section. I think yours went up to the belly or more, and we got out. But then one of the pack horses went in over its head and started, was fighting to get out, and it was you, I think, the mule. So we had, a couple of guys that, they dove in, they got the pack saddles off, and, Dixon Barker, he was, before he was a veterinarian, he actually was a rodeo cowboy. He was a bronc rider, he was a team rover, and all that stuff. He gets on his horse, he goes the lasso, he nails it around his horn, and he starts pulling, and his horse goes over backwards on him. He's into the mud, we're all like, oh my gosh, Eventually, Amish and I went over, and some other people, we got her out, and she was able to get up on the side. She broke the again, and then she could touch, but she was about to give up and just stop. She was done. Dick's actually came out okay, a little bit of knee and her heel that pumped that night. It was good. So incredible ride, 700 miles. And the only thing that we took that was not very correct, was non-negotiable, the wise, we took a beacon, and every night Jack would turn it on and would send his wife a 10-digit PIN coordinate, so they knew where we were each night. And then if there was a catastrophic injury, you hit the button and you're either going to get an ambulance, or a life flight or something. And that was kind of a non-negotiable point of the wise. And then we did have cell phones tucked away because we had a ton of logistical coordination. So to give you an idea of logistical coordination, I'm just going to tell you about one vehicle, my truck, not counting Dixon, Hahn, Conan, and anybody else that joined this trip. My truck left upstate New York, went to his house in Indianapolis, picked up another horse trailer, bigger horse trailer, their 2 horses, all our gear, and a guy that went with us to help drive. We shotgun drove nonstop from Indianapolis to Flaming Gorge, Wyoming. Then my truck went from Flaming Gorge up to Billings, Montana, and we dropped off. Then when we got over the horses, we had friends fly into Billings and picked up my truck. My truck grabbed all the horses. We left there, went to Denver to drop off a mule to Jack's Hole, then went from Denver back to Indianapolis. Then my wife and his wife came with a truck and a trailer to move us from the canoe portion from Indianapolis up to South Dakota, down further to South Dakota, then back to Indianapolis. Then when we finished the ride, we brought the truck and the trailer from Indianapolis to St. Charles, right up here, picked us up back to Indianapolis, back to New York. So my truck did 10,000 miles in 95 minutes. That's just one vehicle, one part of the logistical solution to make this thing happen. It was astronomical planning. So then we get to the next portion with the bull boats and William Ashley at the Bighorn River. I don't know if you've tried to buy a live buffalo and shoot it, 3,500 to 5,000, so we were just a little short on cash for 23 of them. So we stopped along the way out and picked up some buffalo hides, and we built one willow frame bull boat along the Bighorn River. We put the willow that we took with us, we rehydrated it, and then we built the boat, wrapped the hide, tied it off with sinew and vines and things, and then we used 2 wooden pirogues, which are 1825 style made. They're 3-board pirogue that were made in, what state? Where's he from?
Louisiana.
Louisiana. So Jack calls the guy wasn't going to make a boat. The guy calls Jack on Monday, says, "No, I'll make a pirogue for you." He shows up Thursday with the boat at Jack's house. Humidity's all different. Jack and Amish try to float it. It's full of holes. It's sinking. So they're spending their, tar and oakum to get that thing to float. But we ended up, and then borrowed another one from our cuboid captain. We catamaran them together, and like we did with the dugout canoes at Lewis and Clark, and we traveled in those. And traveling in those, catamaran together, there's like one word that describes maneuvering them. It sucks. They're high, the wind catches them, and when you're on the Bighorn and the Yellowstone, they both flow kind of northeast, and they're meandering, and it doesn't matter what time of day you are, you're always into the wind. The whole 400 miles goes into the wind. And so that's what we traveled in for a journey. This journey started out with the 3 of us and 2 guys, and they had a 2 or 3 three-hide canoe. They could only do 5 days, and then they had to go back to work, and we continued on the rest of the journey ourselves. And, okay, next. So then so this is arriving at the confluence of the Yellowstone and Missouri River. And as we're coming in, the last 9 miles, Jack's back there on the tiller, and the Amish are up rowing. And this is where we finally start to understand that the Missouri River is flooding. We don't really know it yet, but we're seeing something going on. And what's going on is the water's flowing back into the Yellowstone River. So, you know, Amish and I are up there paddling like heck for 9 miles, getting exhausted, and he's back there busting on us, going, yeah, you know, let's go, you know. It was a rough 9 miles, but we get there and then we see the Missouri is quite high. We landed in the confluence River Ashes. A couple of really interesting things about the journey. William actually lands there the afternoon of August 19th. So backing up, he left July 2nd, we left July 6th. He arrives October 4th, we arrive October 8th. Same exact amount of days. He arrives on the afternoon of August 19th at the Missouri River. We arrived the afternoon of August 19th at the Missouri River. And just, we weren't trying or anything to do it, but that's our arrival. This is actually Jack and Amish pointing at the 1806 Clark camp. When Clark was on his way back down to meet Lewis on the Lewis and Clark journey. And we couldn't get over there that night. We were tired, so we slept on the opposite side, and then in the morning we rode over and investigated the original camp. It was pretty cool. This was new. I don't know if the cops was there, I don't know why they were when they were there. This is my gear drying out. At some point along the Yellowstone, we're rolling along, rain's coming in, we pull off the side of the river, put on our ponchos, we're hunkered down, passing the pipe around, smoking a pipe, drinking some water, and then the rain quits, and we're like, okay, we'll get back into the pirogues and we'll go. We get back into the pirogues and we take off, and a couple hours later, the sky just starts to get black. We're like, holy crap, we need to get somewhere. So we land on an island in the middle of the river, and we immediately start a fire. We get some dinner going because it's just looking like a really bad storm. And so the storm comes in. We basically just lay down the ground cloth. We line up, boom, 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 3 of us like in a grave, pull the canvas over our head. I'm on one end, Jackson the other end, we're holding it down. And the storm comes in that afterwards, talking to a local guy the next morning, the winds hit 80 miles an hour and a tornado, which he and I heard, you could hear that engine roar, bounced right over us, right where we were on the river. And at one point I stuck my head out, I got sandblasted, and I watched the fire, just kind of logs go up and go down the river. And that was an hour and a half of 3 grown men soaking wet on the ground with flip steel and char cloth. It took us an hour and a half to get a fire going, but that was a really good cup of coffee. So, kind of a crazy, you know, and Jack and I next day were talking, we're both laying here, and I'm just talking about, wow, we came out here to get sucked up and thrown away in a tornado. So then we go to Fort Union, which wasn't there at the time, but it's there now. We have friends that work there as rangers, and we want to sleep in the fort because we've been on the ground for 2 months. And like, well, we don't have a ranger here. We don't really want to fire in the fort. You can sleep in there without a fire. We're like, no, this is late August. It's getting cold. We want a fire. They're like, well, we have a teepee. Would you like a teepee? And we're like, sure, we'll take a teepee. So they bring a teepee out and they help us set it up. One of the rangers that's helping us set up the teepee, his name is Joseph Yellowfell. Hello, got it? I said to Joseph, I said, do you know about our trip? He said, oh, I know all about it. I said, oh, how'd you hear about it? He goes, I'm 100% a regular. My great-grandfather was a regular. He was on the war party that killed 2 of Ashley's men on this trip. Can't make it up. And his grandfather was born on this field right over here. So we were a little worried about the teepee coming down and burning us up. And I said, are we going to die tonight? He's like, nah, no. Pretty good. So then we get to the keel boat. So we're, I think in 2018, we're at another rendezvous and we're talking, and we've kind of succumbed to the fact that we're probably going to have to go down the Missouri River in the roads, the bull boat, because we don't, we've been trying to find a field boat, trying to rent one, a loaner or something, and, there's just such a plethora of field boats out there, but they were all booked for the summer. Then this guy, Bill Bailey, a friend of ours, he's sitting there listening to us, and he's like, "Oh, I built you a field boat." What? He says, "Yeah, it's on my bucket list." We're looking at each other like, "On your bucket list?" He says, "Yeah, I've always wanted to build a keel boat." So this guy was, this picture, so he, I don't know if you heard the name Mitch from VA, who's a keel boat builder. He contacted him, and Bill wanted it completely period correct. So he got books, they got books. He did everything from the right moisture percentage of wood to make sure it swelled up when it was in the water, to building techniques and styles. And this picture is important because Bill, what he does is full time, he's a master carpenter, master craftsman. He builds forts for them. He's rebuilding the fort at Lawton at the museum. He rebuilds cabins, he rebuilds barns. So this guy's always on the road building, and he buys a trailer, extends the tongue, reinforces the frame, puts a second axle on to hold the trailer because it was given to him, he's not going to go buy one. And then he builds, the bottom, and then he puts on this trailer, he hooks it to his truck, and he goes to work at a job site for 2 weeks, and he's working for the customer from 8 to 5, then he turns on the generator and the lights, and he's working on the keel boat from 5 to midnight. And he did that for a year, non-stop, and built this keel boat to 1825 standards. And it, just like the keel boats in 1825, it leaked from the top, the bottom, the sides, everywhere. It leaked everywhere. And we were constantly bailing out, plugging holes, putting high guard open stuff in the cracks. I was a foul nailing, rolls that nails, pounding boards in and tar coming out over the tar and stuff. But he built that whole thing, and then he was going to just say, "Well, you guys can take it and use it." We're like, no, you're not building a keel boat and not being our captain. So he finally succumbs and, "All right, I'll go," and I'm off for work. But an amazing, amazing craftsman. True right down to the colors of it. So Ashley's Hides went on the muskrat, I think the otter, and a couple others, but he decided to go with the muskrat, and it's true to the colors. The maroon, the white, and everything is true to the colors. It's about a third scale, so we only had 2 oars on it, where they would have 6 and 12 on the side. But it's as big as we could get and move to do this trip. This is where they do the Applejack Festival. Here in Missouri.
Nebraska City.
Nebraska City. This is Nebraska City. So we saw this stream feeding on the map that we can see in a little map. There's a built up area, and we're like, okay, we can get into off the river because it's flooding. So we pull in to Nebraska City, and lo and behold, it's the Applejack Festival. The little city of 7,000 has 100,000 people that send on it. So next thing you know, they want us to do talks and presentations, and where they put us on a keel boat through a parade and everything. It's like, can't make it up. This is actually in Yankton. So the keel boat portion, when he gets to Yellowstone, Missouri, obviously they can float all the way down to St. Louis because the river's there. Today, it's 5 dams and 5 reservoirs. And so we started to talk to some marinas about helping us get out of the reservoir and into the river, out of the reservoir into the river. But then the more we talk to, like Mitch and some other people, they're like, "Do not take that on the lakes. The lakes have too high a wave, there's too heavy winds." This thing at 8,500 pounds with all the unit only drafted 11 inches. So it's not going to be stable on the lake. So Ashley didn't do the lake, so we're like, okay. So we started in Yankton, South Dakota, which is, there's a stretch there that's still the original stretch that hasn't been modified by the Corps of Engineers and stuff. So it's still original. Yeah. So this is again Nebraska City. This is actually our first stop somewhere along the way. Who knows where? Bank left, heading downstream. This is Omaha City. So we're literally, we find out all this after the fact. We are literally riding the crest of a flood down the Missouri River. So it was 22 feet above flood stage. Okay. So we come into Omaha, where you can't see over here, right about there, is a Veterans Statue Memorial. The Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, Coast Guard men, you know, the flagpole. But it's half underwater. And we're coming down, we're coming this way, and I'm up on the bow with a rope and, you know, getting ready to jump off and tie it off. And as we're drifting, you know, Bill's bringing it in, he's bringing it sideways, and then he's going to bring it into the dock. And as we're coming up, I'm standing on the bow, and I'm looking at this statue, this war memorial. And the only thing I can think of is, when we hit this, how will we pay for it? Because we're going to wipe this thing out, you know. And I'm literally, I'm panicked. That's all I'm thinking about. I'm not thinking about the boat capsizing and going to water. I'm like, how am I going to pay for that? And Bill does a miraculous job of bringing the boat around and brings it in. And I'm on the bow watching the statue like 10 feet away. You know, and he gets it in. He's an amazing captain, never captained the boat. The top right's a great picture. That was a guy who did a drone of us, so there's a better view way up. And you think you're on this big boat, and then when you see the drone from way up, and you look at that little boat, you know, one little bird, and the Missouri River is going to swallow it, you know. And we, driving across the Missouri River to get here Sunday, or Wednesday, you know, we see all the wing dams, and I'm like, I'm not sure we would have done it without a wreck with the wing dams. Because how do you get around them, and how do you get out, and how do you maneuver a keel boat with all those wing dams? They go out quite a ways. But for us, they were 22 feet below us, so we didn't have to worry. So the next one. So Yankton, we left Yankton on day 2. We're floating down into a left turn and then a right turn. It's kind of a sweeping S. And we hit this fog bank. And this is still like it was with Ashland. We have all the snags sticking up, you know, it's braided, it's got sandbars and everything. It's right there with poles, you know, feeling the depth and everything. And we hit this fog, and we probably could see no further than the beat of the American flag. And you couldn't see a thing. We couldn't even tell where the banks of the river were. You turn around, there's the sun with this halo over us, and we're kind of like, that's a good sign. You don't get a halo back there. But we drifted for about 3 hours, pretty much blind, without even knowing where we were until we came out of the fog, several miles down. And that'll fuck you up pretty much. I mean, just, you know, pushing off snags and getting out of the way. And this, I can't remember what this camp was. We saw 3 full moons and missed the 4th by like 3 days. So some of the camps blend, but that's just a nice shot of the camp. It might have been right after that next night. So, this is Herman, Missouri. I think some of you that have been here will recognize the bridge and the lights and stuff. That was Herman where we stopped, met those folks, and again, you can't make it up. This is St. Charles, Beaumont, down here. This lady comes out, she hears the bell on the boat ringing, she hears the guns going off and shooting. She comes down to see what's going on. My wife and his wife Kim go over there to meet her. That woman is John Coulter's great-granddaughter. Father, grandfather, great-grandfather. Literally, we met John Coulter's great-granddaughter at the landing in St. Charles. And we had just been to the John Coulter Rock up by Eagle Rock a couple days before. She showed up in the night. She since passed away, but just can't make it up. So the question and answer section, I think, I don't know if I went quick or went too slow or whatever, but if I feel a lot of time left over, that's great because, you know, we're trying to capture, you know, 95 days, 2,000 miles, you know, 3 different modes of travel. I guess that's the one thing I looked at too to kind of finish up is a lot of people that like to do mountain man living history, they're really, you know, having a tent, having your camp gear and all that, but they forget these guys did everything. They knew how to make bull boats, they knew how to make dugout canoes, they navigated water, they knew horses, they knew how to make tack, they knew how to, you know, do all these things, and they may not know everything, but somebody in their group do something. And so the mountain men were really, they had to be versed in all these different, some of them even served on field boats in the Army and stuff. So the guys who were rushed and trapped, they weren't one-trick ponies that just went out and, you know, and put up a tent. You know, if you read Osborne Russell's journal, he goes into a camp in the Rocky Mountains in January, and out of 23 guys in January in the Rocky Mountains, 19 of them don't even have a blanket. So next time you're cold in camp, think about that. So these guys, they were tough, they were hardcore, and they could master the water. And bull boats, basically, they built, they got in them, they floated, they did the other side, they threw them out, and kept moving. So they were some pretty hardcore guys. But the last thing I'll do before I go to questions, I'll say this. People say, why did you do it? And we said, why not? We had nothing, we had no inclination to wanting. We did get courted by a movie channel to follow us, and they wanted all the goofy BS about who's the jokester. You know what's going to happen with the cameras. Don't go back and do that. No, we don't want that. We just, Amish in the 40s, I was in my 50s, Jack's in the 60s. So we're 2 to 3 times the age of the men that did this. So we just wanted to see if we could do it. That was it. Could we endure what they did? Could we survive out there? And in ways, you know, the trip was extremely similar, but extremely different. And for us, at points, it was far harder than Ashley. William Ashley can leave the rendezvous site. He follows the rivers and green grass all the way up to Fort Smith. We can't get permission to ride through the reservation in Riverton, which cuts out all the stream and rivers. We have to ride into the Red Desert and go around. So we went 2 days without water in the Red Desert. Doesn't sound like much, but 2 days really kind of sucks without water. And the horses were hurt, we were hurt. So we had to go around all that. You know, Ashley, they can shoot animals and eat all along the way. They don't need to carry food. We have to carry food. You know, but we had potential for modern medicine. They didn't. You know, people say, oh, well, you were integrated with, you know, with people who gave you food. Yep, so did William Ashley. And if you turn down food or hospitality from a Native American, that was your last night of the earth. We're going to slit your throat the next day. That's it, you know. So they took hospitality along the way. So it's really no different. But the bottom line was, why not? We just wanted to do it. And, you know, we didn't want to look back and shoot on ourselves.
Yeah.
Oh, I should have done this. I should have done that.
Speaking of Ashley and shooting, Ashley's connection to the Super Hawkins, after being out west trapping and tired of Indians shooting down on him from the cliffs above that you might have heard earlier, he came back to Samuel and said, I need a Super Hawkins, because he wanted to reach out and touch someone, you know, somebody up on the cliffs. So he made him the 69 caliber Hawkins. I'm sure it was a flintlock. Like, what, 1822? Yeah.
So he made a comment to Sam Hawkins, I'm trying to get shot up from the cliffs, I need something to range 200 yards. And that's what Ashley Hawkins gave me. So I don't know how I did on time. I did on time. Great. So good. We got time for questions. Yes, sir.
Hey, how many miles on horseback and how many miles on the water?
So the horseback, as close as we could tell, was 700. The bull boat road was 400, and the keel boat was 900. So,
And then how when you grazed the horses and stuff, did you hobble them? How did you from wandering off?
Oh, while we were on
Yeah,
ride?
I mean, we've done a lot in the mountains on our elk hunting, not the miles you're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay?
We-
But I know that becomes an issue every night. What are you going to do with your
Yeah.
horses?
Well, we would hobble them
Yep.
and put them on a picket line,
Yep.
and usually, you know, try to find a place for enough for the 6 horses.
Okay.
That was our priority every evening, you know, to fuel them. No fuel, we don't go anywhere, or very little. So hobbles, and once in a while get up in the morning and they pull a picket and be wandering off, but they usually don't go far with the hobbles.
Yeah. Well, I used to have one that knew how to run.
yeah.
So I had 3.
When we say picket, we mean individually.
Oh,
not
individually,
highline.
not as a picket line.
No.
No,
You
individual.
find whatever grass you can, and then the one horse Mohawk was a big gelding, huge. He was on double hobbles with no picket, and he was left to roam free
found some water the last day and almost drowned with them hobbles on.
Well, I could just imagine finding water like you're talking about would be a major priority. Sometimes it's easy and sometimes it's not. So.
Yeah. So about 2 to 3 hours before the end of the day, everybody's focused on looking for grass and water. So you might spread out, you know, and if you find water, you stop. You don't say, oh, there'll be some here. You find enough water for 9 critters, you stop. And if there's grass, you pick them out. And then sometimes you're moving your horse in the middle of the night and you run out of grass, or before you go to bed, you power lunch everything, you gotta move them around. But one of the horses, Wishbone, Dixon Garner, the veterinarian, his horse lost 250 pounds.
What's that?
One of the horses lost 250 pounds.
Did you try to pick horses based upon breed or just what everybody just kind of had or got?
Good question. Early on, I bought a mule. You know, there's Fords and Chevy, so there's mule men and horsemen, right?
Right.
So I was around mule men, and they said, hey, get a mule, they're sure-footed. Well, they are. Mine didn't like to cross water. So I discovered this in the first major creek we had to cross. Everybody was across with me because she didn't want to go. So I thought she was finally succumbing to my kicking, and she kind of tiptoed and leaned down. I thought she was going to tiptoe across the water. Well, she was gathering herself to leap. She was an Olympic high jumper. And she leaped, I wasn't ready for it. I mean, I did the splits, gear went everywhere. It looked like I was having a yard sale. And of course, they wanted to have their cameras out from then on when we come to water. They got a lot of footage.
Wait, we got a cross, Chad. Hold on,
Yeah.
In horseshoeing, my horse was a gift to me from a friend of mine. She was a Mustang, bred to wild running activity shortly after she was American Terms adopted. And she knew what to eat and what not to eat, and I let her eat along the way. People say, oh, let your horse eat, not going to have a whole hill or anything grass, let him eat what he can get. You know, so she would eat along the way. But Jack's mule, my horse, and Amish's horse, we all had clip shoes. It's a sturdier horseshoe.
You know, the one that clips over the front of the...
Well, it's got side clips on it.
Yeah.
There. And so I actually had the farrier at Cornell University do the first set for training, and then he cold shoot, and then he hot shoot, and I think you guys got hot shoes in the end before you went out. So we had really good shoes on the 3 of our horses. Han, Conan, and Dixon just kind of used your tractor supply shoes off the shelf. So they had to do a lot of shoeing before we started, and then along the way, at least twice, once along the creek and once in Grable, Wyoming, at least twice. They had to have new shoes on.
So you just, on your horses, you just pulled the shoes, trimmed them, and you put them back on?
What's that?
On your horses with those shoes, you just pulled the shoes, trimmed their hooves, and put them back on?
Nope.
Yeah.
Once the shoes went on my horse and his horse, they stayed on the whole ride.
Oh, they stayed on for the full 90
months.
some days? Okay.
Yeah, the shoes came off 2 months. Well, mine came off like a month after the whole journey, so her shoes were on like 4.5 months.
Wow.
The 3 that joined us for the ride had just finished a 2-week ride in the mountains at the weekly camp we were talking about. So they had to shoot, and then we left the next 2 days, I think.
So I know you were using period correct pack stuff, but what was it, like sawbuck type pack saddles or what?
Yeah, pack saddles were just sawbucks, just original sawbucks, and handmade. Honey and Conan and Dixon all made their own pack saddle, all their leather work and all that stuff. And Jack and I went up to Idaho, where Han and Conan lived for 4 days, and we learned how to pack a critter and tie a diamond hitch with our eyes closed over and over and over and over again.
Because that was going to be my next question. I spend a lot of time on horseback, even in the mountains, but once you start packing, it's a whole new ballgame.
Yes.
I mean, it was like, oh my God, I'm starting to feel like I don't even know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
The horse, the pack animal, the string, and everything behind that.
Yeah, pack animals are a whole different one of the fun stops, I was sicker than hell, and I don't remember a lot, but we were in Grable, Wyoming. We needed to shoot the horses. It's hotter than the gates of Hades. There's no trees. We're riding right down Main Street, Grable, Wyoming. We passed by a bar, Branding Iron Saloon, which has an outside overhang like this. We get about a block and a half down, we stop, and we kind of circle up, and like, we should go back and ask them if we can shoot under their overhang. It's the middle of the day. So we all agreed we'd go back and talk to the person working there that day. She calls the owner. He's like, absolutely, let him shoot on over. So we spent about 6 hours getting 6 horses, new shoes and stuff. And then before we left, I don't know whose bright idea it was, but Amish had this idea of, hey, let's ride to the bar and get a beer. So we asked the girl that's managing it that night, said, oh, I got to talk to the owner. She calls the owner, and he's like, absolutely. So some of us rode through the back door, past the guy shooting pool, past a couple having dinner, past the people in the bar, down to the end. She handed us a beer, and we went out the front door.
Okay, we got another question.
Yeah.
We've been talking a lot over here about, hawking rifles and how many survive and all that. All I know is our hunting trips in Colorado, just how much wear and tear our guns get.
Yeah.
So your rifle that you took, you got it home. I'm not saying it was in bad condition, but how much wear and tear in 90 days did it get just from the elements and what you went through?
The trade gun I took was really my son. I have another smooth bore, but it's a long barrel. I have a rifle. New length gun. It already had a broken wrist. It was repaired period style. And the most wear and tear it took was just the finish on the stock. So I had a fold over thing on the horn, and then I slid the rifle in there and it rode in there, and so they got worn there. But my gun fell off my horse 3 times. Once across the railroad bridge looking for camp. I rode out, wasn't paying attention, came back and behind it. The second time, Amish and I got into a horse race on that 8-mile driveway, remember that? We took off running our horses racing, and I wasn't paying attention, and Jack came up and said, hey, your gun's back there. And it landed on a gravel road. And the third time, we were running along a road, I-80 or one of them, and I lost it and had to go back and get it. So it took 3 hard spills, 2 onto hard-packed dirt, and no injury to it. And I shot some animals, some small game, but it went off every time and it's had no problems. And, but every night you're trying to clean it up and oil it and repair it and take care of it. But they, not bad. It still shoots and operates fine.
What I was referring to is just not so much that it got broken, it's more the wood finish,
Yeah.
all the flats get all the blue taken off of them.
The wood finish took a beating.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah.
That's one you want?
Okay.
Wait on your belt.
Another question. It is on film. It is on film. It used to be on the Branding Iron Saloon in Great Wyoming. It's still on their Facebook. Us riding through. Yeah. I don't know if I saved it, but they had it for a long time over there.
Put that on your belt.
Jack, what did we miss? What did we miss? A lot. It's in the book. It's in the book. There is a book coming out. It's taking me a while to write it, but it's the goals to have it out. Edited this winter, and trying to get it print for 20 years. But I guess if there's no more questions, I'm going to say this. This is something that we wanted to do. It was on our bucket list. Not really on our bucket list, it just popped up. And we did it. they tell you, you can't, just go do it. Let your actions speak. If there's something you've been mulling around, I don't care if it's going to get your GED or, building a gun or doing something, don't let people tell you, no, you can't. If I had a nickel for every person that said we were crazy, we'd never make it, I wouldn't be here.
There were some bets made.
There was bets made we wouldn't finish. Yeah, there were bets made that we wouldn't make it till 2000. We didn't know until after. But it's just one of those things you're going to do. So if there's something out there you want to accomplish, they'll do it. It doesn't need to be anything this insane. It's something very simple. No. Well,
Unbelievable amount of support.
yeah.
My wife manned a Facebook page daily, posted where we were at and asking people to look for us when she hadn't seen or heard from us for days. Yeah, and doing a lot of logistics. The logistics were tremendous, what had happened.
My parents at one point said to my wife, "Are you really going to let him go?" She looked at him and said, "Well, how are you going to stop him?" But it was crazy, and I'll tell you, 3 of us, 95 days on the ground, we never had to break out a Band-Aid. Not one cut in Campbell tonight, nothing. I mean, it was absolutely, it could have gone south any minute. I mean, we had a snag break loose in the Missouri that caused a whirlpool and took the keel boat down 3 or 4 feet, and shot us back up and turned us 90 degrees. That could have sunk us under. We had snags pop out of the river like torpedoes right off our stern and stuff. They could come through the boat and just obliterated the boat and put us in the water. The horses, there are butterflies out there that can swallow a horse's whole. Just ask your horse. But we didn't have a single horse blow up, react, act stupid, nothing.
Also, the keel boat was donated, and it lives on to educate people. It was at Herman for a couple of years, and now it's at Fort Gibson, putting it to use there for education. Is Paul here? Paul Fennell? Yeah. Okay. He was very instrumental in helping us get down the river on the keel boat by finding us places we could get in, because as flooded as it was, there was very few places we could get off of the river each day. But he towed that boat around for a lot of educational purposes. And then, long story, but Fort Gibson has the boat now. That belongs to some guys from Arkansas. Is any of those here? Those guys? No. Their group, they travel around and travel on that keel boat from time to time.
Is that basically the same design?
It's a little bit bigger. It's got 6 oars. This one only had 2. It was scale, and we needed both of those just to try to keep it going down the middle of the river.
Funny, once we have a little bit of time. So we're on the Missouri River. It's 20 feet above flood stage. We hadn't seen any other fishing boats or anything in days and days and days. That should have been a sign. Yeah, here's your sign. So we're on the river, and this twin-engine power boat was flying up next to us. And Jack's over on the port side in the game board. The game cop looks up and says, "Where are you boys going?" Jack looks down and says, "St. Louis." He looks up and says, "No, really, where are you going?" Jack's like, "We're going to St. Louis." The guy, his face is wet. And so we're like, "Tie off, we'll tell you the story." And we're thinking at this point, we get boarded, we get checked, we get thrown off the river, the river's closed, Jack tells him what we're doing, tells him about the story, and he hands us a business card and says, "If you need anything, give me a call, boys, good luck." We're pretty off. Last boat we saw. All right, any other questions?
Tell us about your mosquito
Man, mosquito harbor, yeah. So everything you hear about mosquitoes west on the Missouri River is true times 10. And at night, as hot as it gets, even in Wyoming, you know, the mosquito goes on to protect you from mosquitoes. And we were second to last night with all the mosquitoes. My trail partner, Conan, is like, oh yeah, I got some period correct mosquito repellent made the way they used to make it. His wife would give him a rally old mouth, get that stuff out, right? So so you got a oilcloth tarp, you know, your saddle blankets for cushion, another oilcloth tarp over you just to try to keep the mosquitoes away. And we start rubbing it on our face, and it isn't doing a damn thing. No, you know, we're smacking mosquitoes all night. And then finally, Conan's like, Gerry, this was pitch black at night. He's like, is your face on fire? I said, it's burning like a son of a bitch. What's in this? He goes, I don't know, but we put too much on. So next thing you know, we're out of bed, we'll wash our feet in the water, trying to get it off. Our whole face is
It was peppermint. I could smell you 30 yards away.
And then at some point, some local gave me an off-white, and I'm like, okay, I'll take it off. And I put it on my face. 20 minutes later, they were like licking it off. Like, it was tall. And you wake up in the mornings, I don't know about anyone else. I wake up with a pot on my face, and my noon swelling up. The mosquitoes are horrific. So even if it's not cold, you still wear that to keep the mosquitoes off. But it's a losing battle. Everything you feed is food times 10. It's awful. That it? All right. Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
In 1877,